Alright, good morning and good afternoon everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on Office 365 for your not-for-profits. My name is Christine Hullim and I'm the Senior Events and Membership Coordinator at Connecting Up. And today with me we have Marcus Harvey from InfoExchange who will be presenting the webinar to you. But I also have my colleague Ryan Jones who will be talking to you a bit more about Connecting Up and TechSoup Asia. Today's webinar is brought to you by Microsoft Citizenship in partnership with Connecting Up and TechSoup Asia and to be presented by InfoExchange. Before we begin, there are just a couple of housekeeping notes for those of you who are new to our webinars. If you have any questions, please type them in the question box in your webinar panel and we will address them as we go along throughout different points in time. And we are actually also recording the webinar, so all of you will get access to the recording afterwards in case you don't get to stay for the whole thing or you want to catch up a bit later on as well. So I'd now like to hand you over to Ryan to do a quick information about TechSoup and Connecting Up before we pass over to Marcus. Go ahead, Ryan.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us this morning. As some of you will know, the Office 365 has just launched a donations program in New Zealand, Singapore, Malaysia and Indonesia. And so we're looking forward to seeing Marcus show us a bit more about how it works and how it can help not-for-profit organisations.
Great. So I will now hand you over to Marcus, who will be explaining to you about the benefits and the features of Office 365. Over to you, Marcus.
Thanks very much, Christine and Ryan. And first of all, a little bit about InfoExchange. We're a non-profit community organisation that aims to use technology to achieve social justice outcomes. We've been around for nearly 25 years and currently work with more than 1,500 community-focused organisations in both Australia and New Zealand. Our activities are focused on 3 social objectives, which you see in the circles on the right. The first being to increase digital inclusion by assisting those in our communities to access and effectively use information and communications technology, because we believe there's a lot of people that have a right to have good access to good ICT and the internet, and that can often be a lot harder than it needs to be. Second, to raise the level of digital proficiency and improve the way community organisations use technology. And third is to advocate and showcase for digital empowerment in our communities. Some of our services include Service Seeker, which is an accurate and up-to-date health and welfare service directory, Service to Service and Service Record Seeker for secure interaction between organisations and case management. We do a lot of implementations for cloud-based services, both CRM and Office 365, and it's really through that experience that we're talking today, because this presentation has really been developed out of experience on the ground with both the positives and some of the challenges which I'll talk you through. And lastly, provision of web and graphic design, which we do a lot of work with as well. I'm very passionate about the non-profit sector. I've spent about 20 years in IT, predominantly the last 5 years working with non-profits. I also volunteer my time on boards, and the thing I really love is helping organisations make a difference, measure outcomes, improve productivity and engage with their communities through technology, because it really is a wonderful enabler when you can get it right. So now a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. From an overview, we want to talk about 8 separate topics. The first being software as a service and the opportunities that that offers. Then we're going to look at the challenges in the non-profit environment, because in my experience working across corporate, government and non-profit is different, and these need to be tackled, the issues in there need to be tackled specifically. Then once you understand more about Office 365, we're going to expand on some of the key benefits that moving to the cloud offers, and we're going to look at what benefits Office 365 offers over some of the other products that are out there. I've used most of them, and I think the case is pretty compelling these days with the free offer available in many countries and coming soon to even more. Then we're going to talk a little bit about or give you some inside knowledge on how we've seen other non-profits successfully build a business case to migrate to Office 365. We'll highlight our top 10 tips for a successful implementation. We'll explore a couple of case studies, one being a national non-profit, Beacon, which has used Office 365 to enable their staff across schools, classrooms and remote locations around Australia. And then we'll look at the Regional Sports Network of Victoria, who use Office 365 across 9 separate organisations. And finally, we'll give you some additional Office 365 resources, and while there will be a couple of opportunities to ask questions during the presentations, we'll give you a final opportunity before closing on time. So, straight into it. From the perspective of software as a service, it's really important that everyone has a common understanding, and software as a service is often used to describe a software solution where software and associated data is centrally hosted and made available through a web browser. And the great thing from our perspective is that this offers non-profits the opportunity of accessing cost-effective enterprise-grade services that is reliable and can really enable your organisation, providing 4 key benefits over and above investing in local server infrastructure. The first being cost savings, because the investment is shared across a really large user base, and especially if someone offers it free of charge, there is some real cost savings that are available through that. The second is flexibility and the capability to scale up or scale down as required, and that's important in our environment because as government grants become available or as new programs come and go, it gives you the opportunity to expand readily and easily into new areas or into new programs. The third being reliability with guaranteed uptime and multiple data centers. That means that you're going to have your key environments available for your staff when you need them. And lastly, and this is really important, is the software stays up to date. It removes costly upgrades and legacy risk. We regularly go out and do IT assessments and plans for non-profit organisations, and one of the things we find more often than not is that they're running relatively old software, sometimes coming out of date. In a national survey that we ran in partnership across Australia and New Zealand with Connecting Up, we found that close to 40% of organisations were still running Windows XP, and that's due to not be supported. It's now more than a decade old, and it's due not to be supported within around about sort of 6 to 7 months. So it's really important that, you know, keeping up to date and giving staff the latest software is critical to ensuring that they're as productive as possible and they spend as little time as possible working with out-of-date software and more time with clients. So let's look now at the next thing, which is what are the common IT challenges in a non-profit environment, because non-profits really aim to make the most of every dollar. It's always a challenge to stretch everything as far as possible so you can help as many people as possible. At the end of the day, there's never enough money to do, or rarely enough money in the organisations we've worked with, to do everything that you want to do to help as many people as you possibly can. Balancing that spend on direct services for clients with other back-of-house costs such as IT means that almost every non-profit is an expert at making do. And one of the key things from the perspective of what we've seen organisations be challenged by is staying connected with distributed staff and volunteers. Most organisations that have staff and volunteers that often work away from the main office, whether it be with clients, in their homes, out and about with the community, or simply working when on the move. Staying connected and sharing information with these people can be a real challenge if your IT infrastructure is situated in your central office. The second thing is reliable and cost-effective backups. Studies have shown that non-profits don't always have reliable and robust processes, and while I'm sure this wouldn't be the case for anyone on today's webinar, the challenge of keeping up-to-date backups and data off-site is sometimes more than most people cope with, and that can be difficult. Should the worst thing happen, either through a natural catastrophe, theft, or just bad luck, organisations can irreversibly lose funding if they lose their data, and we've seen those stories more often than we would like. Maintaining off-site data backups is one of the key things that organisations often can find hard to juggle when pressing service delivery priorities of assisting one's clients and one's community come to the fore. Third one being access to funding for ICT is another major challenge for many non-profits, because there's often a reliance on grant or block funding to keep ICT up to date and supportable. Infrastructure can degrade over time if more pressing priorities mean that grant funding is not available, staff are left with outdated, inefficient software, and infrastructure can be expensive or difficult to support. And one of the fourth common challenge, and the last one that I'll talk about today in the non-profit environment, is access to technical resources, and this is really important. Quality technical resources are essential to keep systems running smoothly and software up to date. Too often we've been asked to investigate an ICT issue in a particular organisation, and it turns out that the underlying cause of the problems are they don't have appropriate technical resources to keep things up to date or working reliably. Organisations shouldn't underestimate the value of good technical resources and support when you need it. So what is Office 365? And it's really a number of things all packaged up together. You know, what I want to talk through is the main thing that it offers in terms of, you know, Exchange Online as a professional email and shared calendaring solution. It also offers Lync for instant messaging, high definition video audio conferencing. You're able to share your screen doing a conference call so callers can see a presentation or other documents that you'd like to share. It includes Sharepoint to store and share files and collaborate on work and manage your documents so you don't have the old issue of which version is the most current, or do I have to pull it off someone's hard drive and getting access to that. We like to think of it as your complete office in the cloud, and it also offers everything you're used to working with. Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote are all part of the offer, but instead of being installed on your PC, these applications are hosted in the cloud and you can access them through almost any device. Many of the organisations we work with use that solution, but also bundle it with the TechSoup option to get our TechSoup / connecting up donor tech option, depending on which country you're in, which gives you access to the Office products, Word, Excel, etc., locally installed if you need that. But one of the things I did want to talk a little bit about on this slide is the strong privacy and security controls, because in evaluating the suitability of Office 365 for your organisation, one of the key aspects to consider is information privacy and security. And deciding whether or not you should store information in the cloud is a critical decision. Office 365 is accredited to many international security standards, including ISO standards, European Union model clauses, the US Federal Information Security Management Act and others. But whether it's right for your organisation depends on the type of information you store, your local laws and the contract obligations for funders. I know we have people on the call from a range of different countries, and privacy laws or contract is different in each of those countries. What we have found is that my opinion is that Office 365 is incredibly secure, and it's much more secure than many of the other options out there today. But whether it's right for you depends on a number of things. One, how sensitive is the data you're considering storing in the cloud and potentially offshore? Sporting clubs, organisations providing family services and health clinics are all likely to answer this question differently. The jurisdiction you operate in and the relevant guidance, including any of your funding contracts, all mean that you need to think about that appropriately. But what's really important to consider alongside that is what protections you have today against loss, misuse and disclosure, because when we start to work through some of the questions with different organisations, some organisations have strong password controls on their mobile devices and off-site backups. Other organisations might share passwords or have servers that are out of warranty, and Office 365 can help to solve a lot of those issues. Many community organisations that we've worked with have made the decision to store their information in the secure cloud environment, and it's less unusual. And while it is a little bit less unusual that organisations that store personal health-related information in an overseas cloud, if you're not sure, it's also always worth talking with other similar organisations or getting expert advice, because the cloud does offer many benefits and offers significant advantages, but it's not right for everyone. And every organisation needs to make an individual decision. But the good thing about Office 365 is that there's the Office 365 Trust Centre is an excellent resource to help you understand the privacy and security controls, and we'll give you a link to that at the end of the presentation. And also, because each non-profit is different, there's a range of different options and choices. The recent announcement that the E1 plan, including Lync, Exchange and Sharepoint, is available free of charge to eligible non-profits in many countries means that most charities can benefit from this opportunity. If your organisation requires an E3 plan or some more advanced functionality, which in our experience is more rare, there's also those plans available at very discounted rates to the sector. I might stop there and see if we've got any questions to date. Christine?
We don't have any questions at the moment, so I'm happy for you to go ahead. Thank you.
Fantastic. So moving on, what are the key benefits of Office 365? And what I'm going to do is, on this slide, we're specifically addressing some of the common challenges we talked about earlier. One of the biggest challenges we hear about when working with non-profits is how to enable staff to work efficiently, stay connected and feel part of the organisation no matter where they are, be it at home, working at a client's office or on the road. Office 365 allows you to work effectively, access your information anywhere with an internet connection through a wide variety of devices. It doesn't matter if you use a Windows phone, an iPhone or an Android phone, they'll all allow you to stay connected, access your emails and your information in SharePoint. Lync allows you to easily connect with others in the organisation no matter where you are. Instant messaging enables quick and efficient conversations to get answers immediately. I know of one non-profit manager that uses Lync daily to stay in touch with staff that are working all around the country, and tells the story of how video conferencing features inside Lync have transformed her team from a group of individuals to a cohesive unit that regularly share information and expertise irrespective of the tyranny of distance. Office 365 also allows organisations to forget about technology and get on with their jobs. It offers lower technology costs, reducing or eliminating the need for servers that need to be upgraded and replaced every 3 to 5 years, inbuilt automated backup and data replication across multiple data centres. Gone are the days of daily reviewing backup success emails and changing disks or tapes. It offers the flexibility to readily scale up or down as funding and opportunities arise without significant capital infrastructure costs. And it also offers 99% guaranteed availability. Actual worldwide availability obviously varies, quarter by quarter or month by month, but last quarter it was 99.97% uptime in our region, and that's something that many organisations just can't afford. And making it available in the 365 platform is an incredibly cost-effective solution. And the last is security, and because one of the things that offers is in part very strong security that previously only other large companies had access to, because it's very difficult to get the security and privacy controls that is within local infrastructure that are offered by Office 365. If you're a small non-profit, you now have what's referred to the ability to access enterprise-level security. Microsoft, again, the Office 365 Trust Center provides a huge amount of information about how the security works for Office 365, and it's readily digestible and understandable, and it's well worth looking at if that's something that's important to your organisation. So why Office 365 over other solutions? And I'm going to talk here about the Office 365 E1 plan, which is the one that is being made available in countries free of charge. And the E1 plan, sorry, one second. The E1 plan offers a range of different things. Some of them are very similar to what some of the other competitors offer. Online email and document editing, allow documents and access email anywhere. Offline document synchronization, so you can work even without an internet connection. It also offers instant messaging, audio and video conferencing. And that's something that the Office 365 E1 plan offers in common with many other similar products out there, but it actually has quite a few differentiators, and they're highlighted on the screen. 75 gigabytes of storage per user, that's 50 gig for email and 25 gig for SkyDrive Pro. Online document editing using an interface that's familiar to anyone that knows Microsoft Office, Word, Excel and PowerPoint. It offers independently verified privacy and security controls, and it's accredited to a wide range of security standards. It's also free for eligible non-profits. While it's not yet free for eligible non-profits in Australia, we expect that will be available later in the year. It's currently available in New Zealand. It's in other areas in the region. There's a wide variety. It's easy to check the Microsoft website and determine availability or when it will be available. And one of the other is that there's no secondary use of data. There's no scanning of information for secondary purpose like advertising analytics, which is another reason that Office 365 offers benefits over and above other potential solutions. Business case. And when we migrate, there are a number of tips that we've used. One of the things that is really important is that this is a whole lot easier than new profit pricing as it becomes available in all countries. But it's not a zero cost sum in terms of the migration cost. There's always effort involved, and you need to consider factors such as whether you should upgrade Office on your PCs or whether your internet connection is appropriate. These costs are comparatively small compared to refreshing servers or other infrastructure, particularly with the TechSoup Tech Connecting Up donations programs. But they do need to be factored to make sure that your migration to 365 is a success. Our top 5 tips to build the migration business case are shown below. The first is, you can justify the migrations with savings around reduced IT support and server costs by eliminating the requirement for server upgrades and for refreshes. Remembering this cost saving is greatest if you migrate when your infrastructure is near end of life and needs replacement. The second, and this one sort of was a bit of a surprise to me before I started doing a lot of migration business cases, but use of video conferencing and teleworking, eliminating subscriptions that may already exist within your organisation to an existing teleconference subscription can provide substantial savings. We've seen organisations justify the total cost of the migration through decommissioning or stopping using an out-of-date teleconferencing solution. The third being protection from significant hardware failure. If you don't have to worry about your server failure or losing your data to theft or disaster in moving to Office 365. And we've talked about some of the privacy and security benefits that come through 365 and the extra protections that it offers. Fourth being effective collaboration across any location, independent of location, can really be a time saver for staff. And last but certainly not least is the time savings that come from having a single source of truth for information and no longer having to search old email trails or the My Documents folder on different computers for a particular file. So in terms of what are our top 10 tips for a successful implementation, because when scoping a deployment, there are a few things we recommend you consider to make sure your implementation is a success. I'll cover my top 10 tips below, but remember, it's always worth having an expert available who understands your specific circumstances so your implementation is a smooth one and your staff are working as efficiently and as quickly as possible. Number 1 is explain the benefits to staff and support them in making the change. We've found that local champions can help staff make the most of new features, and we've seen the train-the-trainer approach work really well here. It might be a surprise to some, but the ability to share calendars, use out-of-office messages, and access your email on a smartphone are a few favourites that we've seen people love in organisations that were using older email systems previously. The second is that SkyDrive is a fabulous tool that can alleviate a lot of concerns about what happens if my internet connection becomes unavailable. Every SharePoint deployment should make effective use of SkyDrive for offline file access and to allow staff on the road to work easily, quickly and effectively. Office 365 also places additional load on your internet connection. You need to consider whether your internet connection that's bandwidth reliability and speed should be upgraded so staff have responsive access to the information in the cloud. Microsoft Office, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, OneNote, etc. is available very cost effectively through your local TechSoup partner. If you need it locally installed to make the most of Office 365, many organisations decide to also upgrade Office on your PCs at the same time. And that gives staff the latest features, and it ensures that it works really well with all the cloud services that Office 365 offers. The fifth is to use an Office 365 expert to help with make the transition a success, and to assist with ongoing support if required. While it takes a lot less technical expertise to transition successfully to Office 365 than an equivalent local server deployment, it is always worth having someone available to help when you need it and to help you work through any potential tips or tricks depending on your specific circumstances. I'll cover how to find a Microsoft partner that's familiar with Office 365 and the cloud towards the end of this pack. So the last 5 tips are to consider local storage if you share large videos or quantities of photos. While Office 365 and SharePoint gives you heaps of space, high-speed, low-cost internet connections aren't always so readily available. This very much depends on where you operate and your budgets. Unfortunately, the internet is not always as cost-effective as Office 365. If you work with videos or share large volumes of photos, you might need to consider local storage to ensure your bandwidth isn't consumed. Of course, if you do choose a local storage option, make sure appropriate off-site backup provisions exist. Storing information in the cloud that's accessible anywhere has a huge productivity benefit, but that does also mean that your local security controls might need to be revised. If you previously relied upon physical building security as a level of protection, this is not available in the cloud in the same way. While Office 365 does have excellent inbuilt controls to ensure passwords are complex and appropriate provisions exist, we have found that there are organisations that share passwords across staff or potentially forget to disable accounts when staff leave the organisation. And this can leave organisations exposed, whether they have local infrastructure or services in the cloud. Migration to the cloud offers a timely opportunity to review your security practices and ensure your information is protected. If you have a large number of computers, an Active Directory service may also offer value to help manage your computers and the user accounts on them. That can be in the cloud or it can be local infrastructure, depending on your local requirements and also how you need to use it. Lync's also a boon for video and audio conferencing, but don't expect staff to be able to take full advantage of the benefits in a noisy or open plan environment if they don't have headsets. And finally, SharePoint and online collaboration spaces can be invaluable for your board or for volunteers, actually allowing them to feel truly part of the organisation rather than off to one side and just being communicated with via email rather than having shared collaboration spaces. So I wanted to talk now about a case study, and this is Beacon, which is a national organisation. Started in 1988, Beacon's worked with over 200 secondary schools and communities across the country. In addition to the 40-odd staff, the organisation has more than 50 business partners and 7,000 volunteers. Beacon believes every young person can develop an independent will and achieve personal successes for themselves and their community. They run a large range of programs, many based in schools, and that places pressure on the organisation's IT infrastructure to share information, collaborate and deliver quality services. Beacon uses the Office 365 E1 suite, which is planned to be available in Australia soon, New Zealand already, and also other countries in the near future. Lync, that includes InfoExchange and Sharepoint, and it enables staff across the country to work effectively and efficiently despite the challenges of a distributed service delivery environment. This provides Beacon with robust infrastructure that's reliable so that staff can access information anywhere, so information is secure and automatically backed up rather than stored on individual computers, and there is only one single source of truth for key information rather than spreadsheets distributed across staff computers that don't always align, and there has a strong foundation that can be easily expanded upon to support new programs, staff and grants as opportunities arise. The flexibility ensures Beacon's well placed to make the most for the future and helps to achieve their outstanding results. Almost 99% of Beacon students were fully engaged in work, education or training after completing Year 10. That's more than 11 percentage points higher than the national average of 16 to 17-year-olds from similar backgrounds in low socioeconomic communities. The second case study I want to talk about is the Regional Sports Network of Victoria. RSNV is the peak body that supports 9 independent organisations operating across regional Victoria. These organisations are charged with the critical role of supporting locally based community sport and recreation organisations. This involves the provision of training, information, advice, skill development and advocacy for clubs, organisations and their communities. It covers almost 1.5 million rural and regional Victorians with a network of 8,500 community sport and rec clubs, and this diversity posed a wide range of challenges, including the provision of reliable ICT infrastructure for local staff who are distributed across an area of more than 250,000 square kilometres, supporting organisations of various sizes, some with only a few staff and others with 20 or more, and fostering collaboration and information sharing across the network. So RSNV really have a wide range of areas they support, and both small and large organisations. RSNV also implemented the E1 plan, Exchange Online, Lync and Sharepoint to overcome a lot of these challenges. And the benefits to their organisation included lower technology risk. The system has guaranteed availability, backups are automatically taken care of, time savings in the order of 10 to 15%, and that really came predominantly from reduced travel through video conferencing and improvements in information accessibility. Staff are more easily able to find relevant information in the cloud rather than hunt through it on individual mailboxes or PCs. And the other one which was lovely to hear about was happier staff. RSNV staff worked there because they wanted to develop and are passionate about community sport. Prior to Office 365, it was really difficult to provide that sort of quality service because it could be hard to find the right information to help community sports organisations. These days, staff can find what they need and they're able to support RSNV clients quickly and easily, and it's led to what was initially not expected benefit, which is staff are less frustrated and feel they can provide a much more valuable service to their clients. Overall, Office 365 enabled RSNV to work effectively despite the geographic diversity and limited ICT capacity, which is a challenge faced by many non-profits for a very competitive price. So, some final thoughts. Office 365 enables you and your organisation to share information and work efficiently irrespective of location, to reduce funding for infrastructure refreshes every few years, to telework far more readily and easily, and to have reliable, resilient ICT environment in the off chance, and hopefully it never does, for when disaster strikes. And it really provides a huge range of benefits for organisations, and it should be considered by all non-profits because those benefits can make a huge difference to the way you're able to support your clients and your community. There's a range of resources up on this slide which will be available in the pack made after the teleconference. There's the Office 365 for non-profits link, which gives you more information about the current offer and eligibility. There's the Learning How to Roll Out Office 365 guide for those that are more interested in looking at the admin rollout guide. There's the User Adoption Centre that provides high-level information for how to get started and specific information across each of the different product sets. To find a local Office 365 partner, you can use the pinpoint.microsoft.com link and search for cloud to find a local partner in your area. And last but not least, there's the Microsoft Trust Centre that gives a whole lot more information about Office 365's privacy and security controls, and really provides, it's actually very digestible and understandable. The vast majority of questions we get asked about when organisations are considering a migration are answered in the Trust Centre, and you don't need to be technically literate to understand them. You know, it's very digestible and understandable. So that's pretty much it from me. I'm going to hand back and see if we've had any additional questions come through.
Thanks, Marcus. Before we continue, I would just like to take a quick opportunity to introduce you to Lizzie Woolnoth from Microsoft Citizenship. I'll just pass it on quickly to her to talk a bit more about the Microsoft Citizenship Program. Lizzie, are you there?
Hi, yeah.
Yep, over to you.
Thank you, and thank you, Marcus, for a very informative presentation. I'd just like to thank everyone for joining us for today's webinar, and thank you to our partner Connecting Up for hosting the call. Today's webinar is part of a broader Microsoft Citizenship program through which we provide capacity building support for the non-profit sector. We offer software donations, host in-country non-profit conferences, offer webinars, organise classroom training, hold executive director roundtable discussions on technology, and produce a monthly e-newsletter called Tech for Good. And the newsletter highlights stories about non-profits and their use of technology. Following today's webinar, you'll receive a copy of our e-newsletter, and we encourage you to subscribe so that you can find out about future webinars, training sessions, and other conferences that we offer throughout Asia Pacific. So once again, thank you very much for joining us today, and we hope you found the session useful.
Thanks, Lizzie. We do have a couple of questions here. Just before I go on, there seems to have been a lot of questions and confusion about the actual availability of the Office 365 donations in the different countries. So I'll pass you back to Ryan to kind of probably explain that a bit more.
Thanks, Christine. Yeah, most of the questions for the first half of the webinar were all about when it's going to be available in Australia. I just want to let everyone know that we don't have a fixed launch date as yet, but every organisation that's registered with our donations program will get an email as soon as Office 365 is released. And we're hoping that'll be later this year or early next year. As soon as we do know, everybody will be let know. In the meantime, if you haven't registered for the donations program, Microsoft do donate their existing box product software through the program already. So it's a great opportunity to get your computers up to date, get away from Windows XP like Marcus was saying, and update through that program. In the meantime, Office 365 donations are available in New Zealand, Singapore, Malaysia and Indonesia. So if you head to that Office 365 non-profits link that Marcus referenced in his last slide, you'll be able to get all the information and register for your donation of Office 365. Thanks, Marcus. So there you go. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Great. Marcus, we have a couple of questions here on bandwidth. So can you probably give us suggestions or just an idea on what's the rule of thumb on bandwidth, for example, benchmark for organizations between 50 to 200 people who need to use Office 365?
It's very hard to give a broad rule of thumb. It depends very much what you're going to use Office 365 for, and also, so for instance, are you going to use it for audio-video conferencing? How much? Are you going to, do you have large volumes and sizes? I would say that if you've got that sort of number of workstations and they're using SharePoint, if they're just using email and a bit of Lync, then you could get away with a comparatively, a more modest connection. Obviously needs to be well in advance of ADSL, whether it's 4 meg or 10 meg, but it does very much depend on usage. My broad rule of thumb is, first of all, it's going to be more than what you need at the moment if you're going to get the most out of Office 365. What we generally recommend is that go with a plan that gives you a little bit of flexibility, because what we find is at the start of a migration, there's always a lot of effort to get the migration happening, and if you have a migration partner that can support that through a large connection, that's always positive. But if you go with something that offers a little bit of flexibility, as people start to make more use of it, you can upgrade from whether you've got a 4 meg, a 10 meg connection to more as the need arises. The other thing is, don't just look at down, also consider what your upload speed is, and consider whether or not you need some sort of quality of service to give video and audio some preferences, because if you are going to make use of video and audio and Lync, then that also needs to be thought through as well, depending on what you're using it for. We've got at InfoExchange here, we have around about 60 staff in our Melbourne office, and we were running off a 4 meg connection, a 10 meg connection for quite some time. We've recently upgraded for a whole host of reasons, and we use 365 along with other things at the same time, but it does depend a lot as to how many people are in the office at once, how many are teleworking, all those sorts of things.
Great, thank you, Marcus. Another question here about users. How many users would you recommend for Office 365? The case studies that you talked about seem to be quite small organizations.
Yes, those two case studies were quite small. We know of other organisations in the hundreds that have migrated, and the wonderful thing about Office 365 is that there is, and maybe Ryan can confirm exactly what the numbers here, but you can scale it as you need it, and particularly for the donations program, off the top of my head, I think it's available to 2,500 now, or maybe more. One of the things that I would say, as you get larger, you need to look at some sort of directory services as well, and you might need you need to think more about your infrastructure. But 365 can happily scale, and I know of organisations that have used it, to very large numbers.
Great. The next question here from Kai is, how easy is it to integrate SharePoint in Office 365 to other systems? For example, for e-commerce or member to access document library based on permission, etc.
It's very easy to integrate SharePoint with other solutions, but the other solutions do need to talk the appropriate language. And one of the things, if you're actually looking at integration, that's one of the things you do need some expert advice on. But it's certainly very easy to integrate. It's, there are single sign-on options as well in terms of that integration to make sure that users don't have to have multiple usernames and passwords. And depending on the type of information and what you want to integrate and what data needs to pass through, that can be as very quickly as an hour to set up to something that's a lot more complex. It can take more time, but certainly there's a wide range of integration options available.
Great. Can Office 365, so SkyDrive Pro / SharePoint, effectively replace local file storage service in terms of data management, permission, etc.?
So yes, we've rolled out Office 365 for a range of organisations. We've replaced those local file servers and also replaced smaller NAS appliances, and it completely replaces all that, and there's no longer anything locally. So absolutely yes, it can.
Thanks, Marcus.
And it actually means your information's available anywhere. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Just quickly as well, just a quick question on some people might not be quite familiar with what SharePoint is. So if you can give a quick overview about SharePoint, just what it is.
Absolutely. SharePoint is very powerful and also provides a lot of different options. We could happily spend a full hour on SharePoint alone and you still wouldn't be across everything it can do. At its simplest, and what I've focused a little bit on here, is file storage as a replacement for a file server. You can also think of it, when I first introduce it to people that are interested, I often say think about it as an intranet and a local file server. That's not strictly true, but it's the easiest way of conceiving it. You can then expand it out to a whole range of different functionality if you want to get use out of that, around shared calendaring, shared task lists, project management components, collaboration spaces. Really the sky's the limit with SharePoint. The biggest thing we find is that organisations sometimes go, yes, I'll have one of everything, thanks, and then only use a small component of it. So with SharePoint, we generally recommend start with the fundamentals and what you need, get good at that, and then expand it, because there's so many components with SharePoint and it's such a powerful tool. You can do a huge amount with it. Organisations also use it for their internet, not just their intranet site. Organisations have used it for board collaboration areas. There's such a lot you can do with SharePoint. It's about how do you get bang for the buck and where do you invest your effort sensibly.
Thank you, Marcus. Also, just to let you know, we did run a SharePoint webinar back a few months ago, so you can find out more about SharePoint features and all that through that webinar. I can certainly send the link as well to that recording when I send that follow-up communications. Another question here about 365. How long does it take to migrate approximately 30 mailbox to Office 365?
Short answer is, how big are your mailboxes and how big is your upload internet connection? It can actually migrate, if you're up to date, you're using a current version of and I'll presume for this case, for this scenario, you're already using Outlook. If you're using Outlook and it's 2007 plus and it's up to date with service packs, etc., it's a very quick process of connecting it to Office 365. You need to configure the back end and get the users set up, and that's a quick process. Then it's a matter of uploading the mailboxes. That can actually process in the back end. Most organisations that we've worked with, they might have a couple of gigabytes for mail, maybe they're on a relatively slow internet connection, but that can upload in the background. And so we generally say, as a rule of thumb, if you know what you're doing, It might be, if you're not completely up to date, it might be a day's worth of setup effort if you've got some more complex infrastructure in the background, just to get everything right, all the users created and all those sorts of things, plus a bit of time per mailbox. But to be honest, you can get up and running in only a couple of hours if you want to just get something started and seeing how it works.
It's just another question on SharePoint. With SharePoint, are you able to invite external users? Is there any limitation for external users, or any limitation on the numbers of external users you can invite?
I would need to come back to you to confirm exactly what that limitation is. My memory is that it's 50 users that are not part of your Office 365 instance, but I might have got that wrong. With the new pricing model for Office 365, that external user account becomes a bit less critical.
Great.
We just had a couple of questions too, Marcus, about the different tiers of Office 365. If you're in a country that has an Office 365 donation program at the moment, E1 is the basic tier, which offers you the web versions of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Exchange, SharePoint, Lync, and I think it was SkyDrive as well, wasn't it, Marcus?
Yeah, OneNote. SkyDrive is locally installed, but yes.
So other than, if you go to an E3 plan, there is a small cost involved. Other than getting copies of the desktop software, so Office 2013 at the moment, is there any other major difference?
It's generally only of use to really large organisations. There's some email archiving, there's some additional SharePoint functionality around integration options. So the E3 plan, we've generally seen it's only the larger organisations that have some more complex requirements that then go, this is worthwhile. Even those that have needed the E3 plan, they often haven't needed it for all staff. It may only be for a proportion, and you can mix and match the two quite happily.
There you go. I learned something new today as well. I didn't know that.
Thank you. That was the last question that we have. We are almost towards the end of time, so if anyone has last burning questions they'd like to ask Marcus quickly, now is your time. But otherwise, we'd just like to thank Marcus again for presenting the webinar, Lizzie from Microsoft for the support to make this webinar possible, and to everyone who attended and participated today. One question here that just came through. The Privacy Commissioner has informed that we must have our data stored in Victoria. Will this happen? Has ruled that we must have our data stored in Victoria. Will this happen?
So the Privacy Commissioner's, I'm reading off the Privacy Commissioner's Health and Information Privacy Principles, has said around trans-border data flows, basically if your personal information travels, your privacy travels with it. It should only be transferred if there are similar privacy standards to Victoria's individual privacy principles. So it hasn't said it must be stored in Victoria, it said it must only be transferred if there are similar privacy principles, similar to what exists in Victoria. Each organisation needs to make their own assessment around that, but that's an individual organisation decision. We've seen organisations make that assessment and decide that on balance, Office 365 offers significant value and the organisation feels that the protections are appropriate, but the Privacy Protection Commissioner doesn't actually say one product is okay and another product is not.
Thanks. I also forgot to mention that that question was specifically for Australia because Victoria is like just a state here, in case our Asia and New Zealand audience is wondering. Is there a local Microsoft hosting in the Australasia region?
no, Office 365 is hosted in Singapore and the UK, and sorry, Singapore and Hong Kong, as I understand it. Lizzie might be able to correct me if I've got that incorrect. As I understand it, Microsoft has announced plans to build an Australian data centre, but there is no date for that at this point in time.
Is there anything you want to add to that, Lizzie?
No, I can find out for sure and circulate the information after the presentation.
Great. Thank you. Well, that's lead us to the end of the webinar. Once again, thanks everyone for joining. I will send through the recording and the slides and other useful resources afterwards. And we'll also send a copy of the Microsoft newsletter, as Lizzie mentioned earlier as well. So we do have arranged more webinars coming up in the next few months. So keep an eye out. We haven't released any dates yet, but there should be another one next month and in December and till July next year. So keep an eye out, and I hope to see you again in the next webinar. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.